with M.A.K.E Nevada and M.A.K.E Alaska. Woohoo! Um, so I'm working on going through Northwestern University's free online nonprofit course through their Kellogg School of Business, sponsored by Allstate. Oh, it's a mouthful. And we have already gone through governance fundamentals. Oh, I gotta start this stream. Hold on. All right, start recording. Hello, it's Amanda with M.A.K.E Alaska, and I'm live streaming on M.A.K.E Nevada. And if you want to watch this replay, I will put the link in the description later. And this will have a video that has what's on screen and has my face, and will be a little bit more clear than this version. But anyways, we are going through Northwestern University's free online nonprofit course, and we've already done the 8 videos for governance fundamentals. Now we're going to go through the 7 videos of what's called your role. I don't know if we'll get all 7 videos today, but here we go. Objective: become familiar with the responsibilities of being a nonprofit board member. Consider how to find the right board for you. Learn approaches for structuring effective and efficient board meetings. So why am I even doing this course? I served on a nonprofit board for 5 years, and I want to start my own nonprofit, so I am in the R&D, research and development phase. I was actually looking for a course that would teach me a little bit more about the things you have to do immediately upon establishing your 501c3, because if you don't do them in a timely manner, it can make your nonprofit be absolved. So this is actually more information that's related to if you're going to be a board member, but I think it's still very useful, and I want to close the loop and finish it to completion, and then after this do a course that is more geared about the establishing of the nonprofit. So we're going to watch this video, identifying the right board for you. Learn insights and best practices to help board members identify the best nonprofit board of directors for their interests and skill sets. You might hear my cat meowing in the background. I have her locked up in another room because if she's in here, she's going to be causing a ruckus. And she hears me talking and she's like, "Mommy, I want to be with you," which makes my heart sing. All right. Applied thinking. As you watch the video, consider the following. What is your drive? What is driving your interest in joining a nonprofit board? What challenges in our world are most pressing in this current moment? What nonprofit areas of focus are you most passionate about? Consider your own story. Do you have lived experience that can help a nonprofit organization? If so, what is that lived experience, and can you find an organization that serves a similar population? So we're going to put our settings on replay for 1.5 speed because slow makes my brain go crazy. And here we go.
Hello, my name is Sean Garrett, and I'm the President and CEO of United Way of Metro Chicago. Identifying the board, just like contributing.
Ooh, he's a naturally fast talker, so I'll slow it down. Some people are not naturally fast talkers. Here we go.
Reading a financial gift is a very personal decision, and today I'll share with you some insights that I have gained to help you think about what it means to find your board. When it comes to identifying a nonprofit board to serve on, the most important thing you need to remember is that you need to truly believe and care about the mission of the organization. Serving on a board should be an extension of what you are passionate about, whether that be a social service areas of focus, including food pantries, mental health, or even United Way, which of course is near and dear to my heart, or arts and culture, education, Your board service commitment is a personal decision. While this is the most important consideration, it's also perfectly okay to recognize that you might still be figuring out what drives your passion. To help kickstart this process of finding a board, United Way of Metro Chicago partners with Kellogg School Center for Nonprofit Management to run a board training and matching program called the Board Leadership Institute. A key goal of the Board Leadership Program is to help participants gain a more meaningful understanding of the challenges facing our region. This helps provide greater insights into the landscape and context facing our nonprofits today. Of course, the Board Leadership Institute is just one way to help you think about finding a board that is meaningful to you. Alongside the Kellogg School Center for Nonprofit Management, we are committed to help as many business, philanthropic, and civic and community leaders as possible get connected to board service. There are many questions and considerations to think about, and content and documents to review to help you identify a nonprofit area of focus and even to select a specific organization. You might consider what challenges you think are most pressing in our current moment. What do you think is the most important for the world to address? If you aren't sure what specific causes you want to address, you might also consider if there's a particular population you want to serve. Another way to explore specific causes and organizations is to reflect on your own story. As part of our board match process with the Board Leadership Institute, we ask each participant to examine their own story and consider if they have any lived experience they could contribute to an organization. In nonprofit terminology, lived experience typically means having faced or overcome some of the same challenges an organization's client might be facing. Many boards are looking for people with lived experience to help inform the work of their organization. We've also found that examining your own story can unlock passions someone didn't know they had. Once you have an idea of the causes that interest you, you can start to look at an organization's work to see if a specific organization excites you. For this, an impact report can be a useful tool. This document is commonly produced by organizations to highlight the annual accomplishments, what the organization is proud of, what successes they've accomplished, and who else is involved in the organization. More important than whether you think the numbers are impressive, which might help demonstrate efficacy, consider whether you believe the things they're accomplishing feel like things you'd want to see improved in the world. If you're talking to an organization, you might ask what they think some of the most pressing challenges in the field and what are they doing to address them. If you understand organizational finances, you might choose to look at an organization's 990. This public document is required for tax filing with the IRS and gives a picture of the organization's finances, including where their funding comes from.
My comment on that is uh, hmm, take a look at how much are they paying their CEO, or otherwise known as their executive director. For example, there are nonprofits where their CEOs make hundreds of thousands of dollars. So think about that when you're donating. Like, I don't donate to anything that I don't know some details about. Sorry, I just don't, because nonprofit world is rife with things that you might not agree with. So the 990 is very good information. How much are they being paid?
What it generally supports. Remember that size is not always equal to impact. A small organization might be doing highly effective work on a small scale, or a large organization might be less effective at what they're doing. A 990 tells part of the story and likely requires follow-up questions and additional context to completely understand. Don't rely too heavily on a calculation of overhead to tell you whether an organization is effective. Dollars used for salaries, benefits, professional development, and other staff supports are often necessary for an organization to secure top talent and to retain it. Much of the work in the nonprofit sector is emotionally challenging and exhausting. Support organizations who recognize this and support their own staff as much as possible. In fact, you might ask how an organization supports their employees to prevent burnout. When seeking to join an organization's board, you'll likely work with a board nominating committee. Many boards have an established process to apply to join. This might include a job description, an application, a meeting with the board chair or representative of the board's nominating committee, and likely a meeting with the executive director, CEO, and/or head of development, which is also known as fundraising at the organization. A board nominating committee, and thus a prospective fellow board member, may be your first point of contact with an organization. When you speak to them, make sure you understand what is expected of you, including logistics of meetings and other commitments. You might ask about the meetings. Is it mostly listening to updates? Or do board members have a chance to add to the discussion? Does the board ask a lot of questions? Do board members get a chance to talk to each other? Consider whether the answers align with what you're looking for on a board. Find out if there's something special about you that could benefit the board. Do you bring a perspective from a new industry? From a unique background? Do you bring lived experience? Do you have a unique skill set that could benefit the organization and the board? This may require someone having a chance to review your resume or CV ahead of the meeting. This is a lot to consider, as this is an important decision for you and the potential nonprofit board. And it's okay to consider what you might get out of serving on a board. Are there skill sets that you might increase? A network you might gain? New things you might get to try? Above all, don't underestimate the power of lending your time and energy to something larger than yourself. Serving on a nonprofit board will require your time, energy, and commitment, but it can be applied towards important work. If you still want to learn more and you happen to be based in the Chicago area, please also consider checking out United Way's Board Leadership Institute. We partner with our friends at Kellogg to deliver a holistic curriculum to train and equip board members. To learn more, please visit the link highlighted below. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in finding your future nonprofit board.
Every single one of these videos has all kinds of additional resources, and I'm going to be exploring those later so that I can just stay on task. So we go back to the role, your role. Bread rolls. And now we have nonprofit board member responsibilities. Understand the typical responsibilities of a nonprofit board member. Applied thinking. As you watch the video, consider the following. List and define the 5 basic responsibilities of nonprofit board members. I wonder if I can guess. Responsibilities: fundraising, overseeing the financials, hiring and overseeing the executive director, volunteering. Geez, I don't know what the 5th could be. Those are my guesses. Let's see if I'm right. Here we go. Whee!
Hello, my name is Allie Henry, and I'm a clinical assistant professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, where I lead the Golub Capital Board Fellows program. My students are often surprised to learn that there's no prerequisite for nonprofit board service. That's right, while the law requires every nonprofit to have a board, there's no requirement about how prepared board members must be. That means that anyone can volunteer for the job of board member so long as the existing board members vote them in. It also means that sometimes board members know nothing about the nonprofit sector before stepping into the boardroom, which often leads to board members holding different expectations of what it means to be a board member. In this video, I'll describe the typical responsibilities of a nonprofit board member. We're proud of you for taking the time to educate yourself or brush the dust off of what you already know. So let's start with the good and very important news. Nonprofit is a tax status, not a way of doing business. Everything you know about how to pay attention, engage, lead, and follow through on commitments in other areas of your life are directly relevant to your role as a board member. 90% of the job is to show up and thoughtfully contribute. But what is the best way to thoughtfully contribute? Well, let's start from the beginning. The board is responsible for governance, and governance is the act or process of overseeing the control and direction of something. The 2 words I highlight in this definition are process and overseeing. Process implies there is order to the work, and the work is never done. The word overseeing implies the board's role is to observe but not do. Some like to think of governance as a window. Board members can see in, but they keep their fingers out. The board is not responsible for getting the work done. They are responsible for ensuring the work gets done. Now, beyond the definition of governance, there are 3 legal responsibilities you should be aware of. Board members have 3 fiduciary duties. First is the duty of care, which requires a board member to exercise the same care that an ordinary, prudent person would in a like position or under similar circumstances. This means, at minimum, you will pay attention, engage, and make informed decisions. In practice, I find the duty of care can boil down to 3 C's: context, curiosity, and courage. First, context. Seek out full information about the board, about the nonprofit, and about its broader ecosystem. Do your research so you can make informed decisions. Second, curiosity. There is little more powerful than a well-placed question. Approach with humility and ask good questions. Third, courage. It's not enough to just think of good questions or have good ideas. You must also voice them. You are at the table, so use that privilege for good by engaging with your full self. Okay, back to our fiduciary duties. The second is the duty of loyalty, which requires a board member to act in good faith, be faithful to the organization, and pursue the organization's best interest. In other words, it's not about you. Make decisions and take actions that serve the mission and the organization. Third, the duty of obedience requires the board to act in accordance with the organization's rules and policies. This means that you agree to further the organization's goals as stated in their mission statement, articles of incorporation, and bylaws. These fiduciary duties apply to all nonprofit board members and can seem simple. It gets harder in practice. So let's get more specific about what board members do. I boil it down to 5 basic responsibilities. Mission. Board members define the mission and are responsible for ensuring the work of the organization is making progress toward that mission. Second, strategy. Board members ensure that effective planning is taking place. At smaller organizations, board members may be directly involved in developing the strategic plan. At medium-sized to larger organizations, board members typically only review and approve the strategic plan. Third, leadership. There are 2 components to this responsibility: the staff and the board itself. First, staff. Boards have only one employee, the CEO. Boards are responsible for selecting, supporting, and evaluating the CEO. The CEO then is trusted to manage the rest of the staff. If you're involved in a smaller organization, say with no staff or just one staff member, the board may have to take on a more active role in operations. Still, even when those lines get blurry, remember that boards are ultimately responsible for governing, not operating. Second, boards are responsible for maintaining themselves. The task of building a competent board lies with the board, not the staff. Recruiting, onboarding, training, and evaluating the board should be led by the board itself. Next, finance. Board members are responsible for ensuring the organization has adequate resources, providing financial oversight, and protecting assets. This means that each board member must understand how to read financial statements. If you need a refresher on this, please visit the videos in the finance module. It also means that board members are responsible for engaging in fundraising by making personal contributions, identifying and engaging prospective donors, and stewarding existing donors. Finally, ethics. Each board member is responsible for ensuring the organization operates with integrity and for enhancing the organization's reputation. Fulfilling these responsibilities requires that you're willing to commit your time, talent, treasure, and ties to the organization. You'll show up, you will bring your skills to the table, you will put your own skin in the game, and encourage others to do the same. Remember, no amount of good intentions or pro bono resources will pay the bills. By living out these commitments and responsibilities, you will be a coveted member of any nonprofit board, and you will be rewarded by a more fulfilling life of board service.
All right, I used different verbiage, but my guesses were kind of spot on. I mean, a little bit different. I think we have time for one more video before I have to go to work. Jobby jobs, worky work. Fiduciary duties of nonprofit board members. Understand the importance of the fiduciary duties of nonprofit board members, including the duties of loyalty, due and reasonable care, good faith, avoiding conflicts of interest, and avoiding self-dealing. Applied thinking. As you watch the video, consider the following. As you consider serving a nonprofit organization as a board member, what questions can you ask the CEO, executive director, that will help you fulfill the fiduciary duties? Are you wasting money? That's what they're going to ask. You better not be wasting money. Here we go.
I am Mark McCarrans. I'm a clinical professor in the strategy department at Kellogg's Graduate School of Management. And today I would like to discuss the fiduciary duty of nonprofit board members. At the root of all obligations and responsibilities of nonprofit board members and officers is the fiduciary duty. The fiduciary duty is one of the highest legal standards, and it encompasses several distinct areas, including the duty of loyalty, the duty of due and reasonable care, the duty of good faith, the duty to avoid any real or perceived conflicts of interest, and the duty to not usurp opportunities for yourself that would otherwise be taken by your organization. That is, no self-dealing. While it may be thought that the fiduciary duties of officers and directors for public, for-profit companies should be different than for a volunteer serving on a nonprofit board, generally those duties are not legally different. Your compliance as a nonprofit officer or director with your fiduciary duties is tested by an objective standard. That is, what would a reasonable, disinterested person do in the same circumstances? Clearly, if you have subjective bad faith or bad intent in the course of carrying out your board functions, you will violate your fiduciary duty. However, in most instances, board members possess subjective good faith, and then it becomes a question of whether their conduct passes this objective standard. In order for a nonprofit board member or officer to better ensure compliance with the fiduciary duty, specific steps can be taken in lockstep with general sound governance principles, and among them include creating and using good board documentation in terms of agendas, and fact-based minutes of meetings to explain not only the action taken, but also how the decision was arrived at. While a form of privilege does not usually attach to board discussions unless legal or accounting advice is being provided, board members and officers must consider that maintaining the confidentiality of internal discussions is part and parcel of their respective fiduciary duties. Always allow for sufficient notice for board action of proposed activities that could impair the organization in any way. That is, getting an agenda with an action item that requires much thought the night before a board meeting is generally not advisable. Another example is if the board and officer review of the annual IRS Form 990 and submitting a draft to the board the night before a meeting to approve the form for filing would generally not be good governance. When expertise is needed, like finance, legal, or insurance, always try to enlist board members with expertise in the area in question. And if no board members have such experience, attempt to recruit ex officio members to brief the board on these matters. Conduct the business of the board in accordance with the organization's bylaws. If the bylaws need refreshing or updating, that is a good task for the board to make sure that all board actions are carried out in accordance with the bylaws. Use existing committees, those recognized by the bylaws, to assist with governance. For example, cybersecurity breaches represent a significant risk for most organizations. Is there a committee charged with risk management issues that would include cyber breaches or hacks? Making hasty or rash decisions without all the facts invites an investigation of the board's decision-making process. While generally the board cannot be perfect in its predictions, when a board makes a flawed decision using a flawed process, questions about compliance with the fiduciary duty will follow. Stifling dissenting views or cutting short discussions to avoid controversy for the sake of keeping the meeting on time is not good practice. If a particular issue requires further review and discussion, then table that issue to the next meeting or appoint a committee to investigate the topic further and report back at the next meeting. Fiduciary duties apply not only to actions taken, but to situations in which the board and or officer is blind to a particular situation. For example, with respect to the previously mentioned cybersecurity threat that all organizations face today, failure of the board and or officers to anticipate such a risk and put a program in place to guard against such risks may constitute a breach of the fiduciary duty. One consideration for a board member or officer is whether the nonprofit organization has enrolled in a director and officer's liability insurance policy, commonly called D&O. Such policies reimburse the organization and covered individuals for legal expenses incurred for suits brought alleging some sort of malfeasance by the board or an officer. Such policies for most nonprofits are not overly expensive, and the annual review of a D&O insurance policy should be a regular part of the board's governance protocols. In sum, it is an honor and a privilege for one to serve as a nonprofit board member or officer, especially when the mission of the nonprofit coincides with those of the officer or board member. However, it is also important to recognize that adherence to the fiduciary duties is mandatory when one accepts such an appointment to the board.
So why is D&O insurance important? Let's say that you have a board member who embezzles some money and now you have to sue them. That D&O is going to help pay for all those legal costs, right? So there's lots of examples. La la la, how much time do I have? 22, 3. That's going to be all for today. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. And I hope you learned something too. Have a great day.